We're back for week 8 of the Climate Tech Inc. NFL prediction show. Cole McDaniel, Vince McKee, and happy for another episode of this show. And Vince, before we get things going and get to our picks, quick talk about our sponsor.
Ironically enough, I put on the heat today for the first time. Didn't want to do it. Came home from work, a little bit too chilly for my liking, but I knew it was going to kick on because we get all of our HVAC services through Climate Tech Inc. Phenomenal job out of Climate Tech all these years as our main sponsor. And at Climate Tech Inc., they provide expert HVAC repair, maintenance, and replacement services. Give them a call. Somebody's there 24/7. Give them a call, 440 529 2880. Again, guys, that is climate-tech.com.
So, Vince, last week we ended up splitting. We had a bunch of upsets. Both of us picked a bunch. So, despite all the upset picks that we did select, only two games different. And I got the first one, and then you were able to get the one where you picked the Steelers over the Jets in prime time, and that's where we stand. So really no difference in the standings because of the split. So, but another good week for us overall. We're hitting a point of the season where the middle part of the season gets a lot easier to pick because you know who's good, you know who's really not at this point. You know the trajectories for these teams. Some of the teams that are under 500, but maybe have a chance to still compete for a playoff spot in the ones that they're so far behind that they're tanking and the season's probably done. Of course, the Cleveland Browns have to fall in that group. And of course, we'll talk about the Browns here a little bit later. But before we get things going and we talk about Sunday Night Football, any thoughts on last week of the season so far?
It's been a tougher season than predict some weeks. Other weeks are pretty easy. Kind of looking ahead to week 8, a little bit tougher. What I thought was interesting was Detroit falling behind early against Minnesota on the road and then coming back to beat them. That was a game both you and I had picked, right? The other one, Houston losing to Green Bay, last play of the game, that type of stuff. There's certain games, sure, where those things are going to happen, and you can't really avoid them, right? But as far as like an overall scope of things, I don't think a lot of people coming into the season would have said the Broncos were going to be, 4-3 at this point. I'll give it away right now. I picked them this week to beat Carolina, so hopefully they're 5-3. Situations like that you didn't expect to see. Clearly, Miami at 2-4, Tua coming back, is that going to lift them? Pittsburgh 5-2, and you have Pittsburgh with, hey, Justin Fields got us there, but now Russell Wilson looked really good after a shaky probably first quarter and a half of that game on Sunday night. So a lot of different things going on, but as we said, we've kind of pinpointed all year. We believe teams like Detroit and Houston are those perennial underdog teams that this year should be a powerhouse. And then other divisions are just so unpredictable when you got teams like the 49ers at 3-4, Dallas at 3-3, just a lot of crazy things still to play out. But it's been exciting. It's been fun. I mean, I always say this is the week, right? Coming into Halloween. So a week from today will be Halloween. And, for me, it's always that first quarter pull.
So you mentioned the 49ers and you mentioned the Dallas Cowboys, and that's who's facing off in Sunday Night Football. Dallas is coming into this game having a bye week. So they had plenty of time to prep for the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers on the other side, they haven't had Christian McCaffrey all year. Run game hasn't obviously been as strong without McCaffrey, but they've been able to still move the football down the field with Jordan Mason. But then, he's banged up a little bit in the game the other week against the Seahawks. So ultimately, we have not seen that offense move at the same clip. Brandon Ayuk lost for seems like an extended period of time. Debo Samuel's been a little bit banged up, not because of injury, but actually because of pneumonia. So he's sick and trying to come back. So the healthiest wide receiver they have of some of their quote unquote best receivers is Ricky Pearsall, who was shot in the chest two
Yeah,
months ago,
coming out
right?
of a strip club. Yeah,
So
my guy.
the thing is it's not going well for the 49ers. That team, though, with Kyle Shanahan's system, they always seem to find a way to win games. They have for years. They've got a ton of talent on that team defensively. This Dallas team, they've struggled this year. They struggled to stop the run. They've struggled to run the football against the 49ers defense that I think can stop the run once again, and just put the football in the hands of Dak and see what he can do. I believe in the 49ers here to win this game. Who cares if Dallas has had the extra week to prepare? San Fran's at home. Give me the 49ers 27-20.
Dallas isn't coached very well. They're one of the most undisciplined team in the NFL. Same with the Browns. It's funny, we're going to talk about both of them on tonight's show. But Dallas is another one of those teams that can come into every season with a ton of talent, and it doesn't seem to matter. They find a way to lose. Big Dak Prescott guy, but again, he can't seem to win the big games. Just kind of a hot mess. San Francisco, though, worries me for all the reasons you just gave, quite frankly. They seem to be very injury plagued this season.
Yep.
Not a lot has gone right for them. However, 2 weeks ago, I kind of feel like they got back on the right track when they blew out Seattle. And then last week, obviously, a step back against Kansas City, who really, quite frankly, just seems to have their number going all the way back pre pandemic to that Super Bowl in 2019 into 2020. So, that being the case, for now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stick with the 49ers. Hopefully, for them, they could right this ship. But I will say this: if San Francisco loses and falls to 3-5, it's not going to be looking too good. Only thing I will say though, the NFC West, I mean Arizona at 3-4, Seattle at 4-3, it's still right there for the taking. And you know how
Yeah.
I love my Rams. Puka Nakua, Cooper Cup, both coming back for them pretty soon. They could still turn it around, but still, the 49ers need this win.
It'd be shocking if the Rams actually compete in that division, especially
Would love
considering
it.
it sounds like they've been shopping some of their big name guys. So,
Yep.
Cooper Kupp was a guy who the Chiefs were apparently calling about and trying to see about bringing him in, but they didn't want to supposedly actually give up the draft capital to get him, so they went with a bit cheaper of an option in DeAndre Hopkins. So definitely interesting there that the Rams are already thinking about shopping some guys in a division that could potentially still be wide open. I think it's pretty telling that if they lose another game here this week, maybe the following week, the Rams they might be, you know, cashing their checks and looking towards next season as well. But 49ers, Seahawks, Rams, Cardinals. I mean, you can kind of go down the list. Who knows who's going to win that division at this point? It's still pretty up in the air. So, Monday Night Football, though, a team that is sitting towards right at the top of a division, the AFC North, the Pittsburgh Steelers. They continue to find ways to win football games. They're going up against the New York Giants. The Giants I believe it's going to be Drew Lock this week, if I'm correct on this. So Drew Lock,
Saw that
not
as well.
Daniel Jones, going up against the Steelers defense that has been good. I know you talked about Russell Wilson a little bit, that situation on offense, but your thoughts on Monday night? Do the Steelers win this game, Vince?
Yeah, they're gonna win. I don't know if it's gonna be a blowout. I'm gonna keep this one short and sweet. Giants are just terrible. The fact that the Browns lost to them, my God, it just shows you how bad the Browns have been this year. Pittsburgh, very good, a lot better than we thought. I think better than everybody thought coming in, but very good on defense. Still, do not really give a hill of beans to that offense. Russ got hot, like I said, in the last 2.5 to 3 quarters there. Have to give him credit. He played a good game on Sunday night. But I'll say it again. Pittsburgh is not a team that's going to beat you with their offense. They are a team that's going to beat you with their defense. I could see them turning over Drew Lock 2 or 3 times. I think Pittsburgh wins this one pretty easy. But I will say this for Drew Lock. If memory serves me correct, I want to say it was for Seattle maybe last year. Wait, it was for Seattle. Like late in the year, Geno Smith was hurt. Drew Lock came in and won a big Monday Night Football game for him over Philadelphia. It was over Philadelphia because I remember getting home from the gym and watching that with Emily.
Hmm.
So Drew Lock has a little bit of Monday Night Magic in him, but even so, Pittsburgh for the second week at home in prime time against a New York team that plays beneath Rutherford will win.
So the
How ironic
Pittsburgh
is that?
Yeah, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they made the wrong decision of sitting Fields and going to Russell Wilson. I will die on that hill because 1 week, and it wasn't even 1 week, it was one half. People were calling for
Boober.
Justin Fields to come
Yep.
back in the first half by
Mm-hmm.
halftime. As the second half, Russell Wilson started to pick up some steam, started to get hot. The Steelers hammered the Jets. It wasn't a close ball game. They blew the doors wide open. And then everybody's forgetting about that. No, 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 no. You got to take a step back. And maybe part of why they're doing this is because, well, we brought in Russell Wilson thinking he was going to start. We're thinking about our chances of down the line and maybe trying to win a Super Bowl. He's won a Super Bowl before, so maybe he has this postseason experience. Maybe that's what we need. I don't necessarily know on that. I think maybe the other thing is they're maybe hoping to keep Justin Fields from playing over 50% of the game so they don't have to give up a higher draft pick, right? Wasn't it a sixth rounder? If he plays
Hmm.
less than half, it's a fourth rounder. If he plays more than half, maybe that's what they're trying to avoid,
That's something
is
else.
make sure he
Yeah,
doesn't play 50% of the games. I don't know what the logic is there, but it ultimately worked out. Seems like it doesn't matter who's at quarterback for them when their defense is playing well enough. Again, they should be competitive in these games. So let me come back to what I was saying. Justin Fields has not been given the keys to the greatest offense in the world. The offensive line has significantly improved from the past couple years. At running back, Najee Harris, I think he's a bum. I really do. Jalen Warren is the best running back in that running back room. He runs hard, he's physical, he's tough. I really think he's a great running back, but he's been hurt this year. He'd been really healthy in the past couple years, but he had been hurt for a little bit. He seemed to begin up to speed a little bit more against the Jets, but the week prior, he didn't look like he was fully himself. So the thing is, aside from I believe in Jalen Warren. I think George Pickens is a good receiver, but I think he's a good blocking receiver. He can make some contested catches, but I don't look at him as who should be a wide receiver one on most teams. He should be a two on most good teams, maybe wide receiver three. Um, Again, they just don't have a really strong wide receiver core, and I don't think they'd been getting open this season. I will say what helped Russell Wilson out. Never seen the Jets secondary maybe play so bad, and I've never seen the Steelers receivers this season be that open. I mean, they were just running free. So Russell Wilson, all he had to do was quite a few times just hit wide open guys. I mean, Calvin Austin streaking across the middle of the field. Nobody was around him within 20 yards, specifically thinking of that play that went for a long game, but nobody was around him. So Russell Wilson, he hit the throws he needed to hit. But even though everybody's saying he got hot, I didn't like his placement. His ball placement really wasn't that great. He was still trying to get into rhythm. And I don't know if he's going to get back into rhythm or this is just the Russell Wilson of now and he doesn't have quite the same touch that he used to have in the past. He underthrew Pickens multiple times. The one where Pickens was beating his man down the field and it was underthrown, and then he had that great juggling catch. Well, he had to slow down his route and reach back, and that's how the defender got his hands on it because it was underthrown. Fryermuth, you drop it in his in the bread basket on the run, probably a touchdown, but he had to lay out and dive for it because it was overthrown. He underthrew Pickens another time on the left sideline. So the placement wasn't perfect. I still need to see more from Russell Wilson. And my question is when they go up against a team where there's a good pass rush, Russell Wilson's fairly mobile, but he's not Justin Fields mobile. Does he have the legs to extend the plays like that? Does he offer that dimension of the game in the red zone? No, he absolutely does not. So I think that Justin Fields is not only the future, he should be the present as well. I'm not necessarily, I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit on Russell Wilson. I'm going to say this though. This Giants team is not good, Vince. Dexter Lawrence is a good pass rusher from the interior. Brian Burns is a good player. They might actually generate some pressure on Russell Wilson. I actually think he's going to take a step back against the Giants. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game, but because the Giants are probably going to do anything offensively, I've got this one Steelers 24-13. But let's pump the brakes on Russell Wilson just a little bit because I'm not 100% sold.
Yep. You know, it's weird too. Sometimes I get the feeling that Justin Fields will be back out there at some point, whether due to injury or
Yeah,
whatever the situation may be. I don't think you've seen the last of him by any stretch.
no, I don't think so.
Pittsburgh's starting to become, and I say this in jest, completely joking, but they're becoming one of my more favorite teams to watch. I think because in our market, we're stuck watching them as often as we do,
Yeah.
and they're on national TV a lot. But they're actually a fun team to watch. And me and you have picked differently on them twice. I've won both. I know I'm up by 7, but two of them had to be Pittsburgh wins. Kind of stings a little, but I'll take it. Week 1 against Atlanta, and then this most previous week against the Jets.
I picked the Steelers and you picked the Colts that one week, and the Colts won. So you
So
got that
three
one
and zero
correct as
either.
well. Yeah,
Yeah,
the time you
I'll
win
take
against the Steelers, it worked for you.
Yeah. There's
So
every year there's that team. There's always some team that you and I just kind of flip flop. It's usually Tennessee, but we're they're so horrible that's no longer Tennessee for a while.
yeah, no, the Steelers, we're going to see them a lot this season, and they
hmm
have been interesting to watch. Not that I'm necessarily rooting for the Steelers to do well, I'm not, but um, they have a good defense. I mean, they're playing physical, tough Steelers football defensively. I like that the offensive line's gotten a little bit better. At least you can digest watching them protect their quarterback this year. That's a much improved unit, and I was liking watching Justin Fields in there. I liked seeing him have this success, and he's probably going to be their go-to guy for the next few years. But whatever the strategy is. Maybe good to see Russell Wilson maybe get some confidence back and see him out there having a good game. But I agree with you. I don't think that's going to be the last of Justin Fields this year. We're probably going to see him again at some point. So don't hold your breath, Steelers fans. There could be some flip-flopping at the position, but it might not actually matter. You might continue to still win football games before that brutal second half stretch of the season. So the Cleveland Browns, they go up against the Baltimore Ravens, an AFC North matchup, and division rivals here, where we get to see the Ravens, who are a really strong team again this year. Defensively, they're good. All around, they're a good football team. And then you have the Browns, who realistically, on paper, they could have been a really good football team, but the coaching staff changes have been terrible. I mean, it's been a complete flop. The players have not executed. Now you have a different quarterback now that Deshaun Watson has torn his Achilles and he's out for the year, and he's got a 9+ month recovery. And I think Browns fans are hoping that that's the last of him in a Browns uniform. It should be the last of him in a Browns uniform, but again, with being under contract next year, we'll see what they end up deciding to do. Who knows? But the writing should be on the wall. It's just going to be a matter of if it actually is. But for this season, Jameis Winston should be the guy for the rest of the year. Just to even have a respectable season, somewhat put an even somewhat decent and entertaining product on the football field. Should have been him last week. It almost seemed like they were just making that move for a couple reasons. Maybe to make sure that the fans weren't calling for Jameis Winston during the game because they knew they weren't probably going to be calling for DTR because everybody knows what you have with DTR. He's great in the preseason, but he's never going to be a starter in the NFL. He can't quite do it in the regular season. Maybe was it because they were starting to think about maybe shopping Jameis Winston? I don't know. That plan's probably out the window now at this point. And could it have been just for the sole fact of, hey, let's see what we have with DTR, and they have a strange belief that the fans don't have in him at this point? Maybe. But whatever their plan was last week, it all fell apart. Jameis Winston did have to come in at the end of the game as the emergency third quarterback, and he looked good. He was the best quarterback of the game. He quickly led the team down the field. They scored a touchdown, beautiful pass to David Njoku, put it up high in the back of the end zone, then found Cedric Tillman in the end zone for a 2-point conversion. I mean, Vince, this is what we knew we were going to get from Jameis Winston. He's a guy who can stand in the pocket. He's going to fire the ball down the field. He's going to take some chances. He's going to put the ball in risky windows. Um, might throw a ton of interceptions, might throw a ton of TDs. You're going to get both with him, but at least, at least it's a little Joe Flacco-esque because Flacco threw a ton of interceptions last season, ton of touchdowns at the end of the year. So maybe the Browns will find some new life. Unfortunately, it's just a little too late. So I want to go Browns, but give me the Ravens in this ball game, 30-16.
I think it is too little, too late for sure. I don't
Yeah.
know anybody who could tell you that it wasn't. Um, Interesting, with six division games coming up. Well, now five, but heading into last week with six division games coming up against Cincinnati, that really was the Browns' last chance. By some miracle to sweep the division and go 6-0, then all of a sudden they're right there in the thick of things. Clearly, that's not going to happen. what I like to see out of them is an entertaining product, right? And could this be something that stops a fire sale, keeps Miles Garrett here, keeps Newsome, some of those guys too, right?
Yeah.
Get some wins. I'd actually like. I think this team's pretty decent in the long run if these moves pay off and you come back with this roster with the natural upgrades that you do every offseason. You're gonna have a first round pick for the first time in years. You're gonna have some draft capital. You're gonna have a chance, right? The salary cap's gonna kill you again, with Watson. So you're kind of stuck in that situation. But for this week at least, their goal should be to score at least 3 touchdowns, 3 offensive touchdowns. I don't care if you got to put on a chalkboard somewhere or a dry erase board. Put the number 21 and try to get there at all costs. They're not going to win the game. I think it's going to be real close. I just do. With the new
Mm.
quarterback, Dorsey calling the plays, a home game, people are so desperate to cheer something. So they're going to keep it close, but Lamar Jackson does not lose in Cleveland. I don't know if he ever has. I think the one year the Browns actually beat the Ravens in Cleveland, it was Huntley playing quarterback.
Yep.
So all that aside, I think it's going to be a good game. Um, but yeah, definitely Baltimore in this one. Long term conversation. Our guy Dahmer was just here. Our guy Dom Clary just left a few minutes before the show started, and we were talking draft, and we started watching some clips from last year's draft. So, it's crazy. Here we are, October 24th, and I'm already thinking about the NFL draft because the Browns are that bad.
Yeah, and here's the tough thing is from a Browns perspective, you now have a first round pick for the first time in a couple years. You have some major needs. And I would love to see the Browns go out there and put a competitive product on the field and make these games interesting. Or else you're going to have a fire sale of a lot of talent. The tough thing is I'm torn. There's if the offers are worth it, right, and the return's worth it, anybody you should at least be open to taking conversations. And we've said that before. It's just a matter of do you pull the trigger? The Browns, if they keep most of what they have intact, they're going to, on paper, have another good roster. They probably need to make some coaching staff changes. I'm not necessarily saying it head coach with Kevin Stefanski. I think Stefanski was two-time coach of the year for a reason. It's just they had some bad assistant hires. Um, they need to change some things up with their system offensively, especially. So I think that the tough thing is yes, I'd love to see the Browns win, but I know what that also does for the draft. It moves you back later in the first round. Uh, I mean, right now you're sitting with a top five pick, a lock to be a top five pick if you keep losing like you are. You could be easily top two, maybe even get the number one overall. After giving up so much for Deshaun Watson, if you can end up with a top three pick, you know how much draft capital that could give you in the sense of not even saying pick somebody with that pick, trade down and acquire multiple first rounders off of that, multiple high picks. Um, you have the roster that's good enough on paper. If you keep most everything intact, you could get yourself into that position, trade down, get a couple good players, and you're
That's what
right
the
back
Bears
in the
did.
thick of things next
Yeah, look
year.
what the Bears did a couple years ago.
So, to
Yep.
be honest, I'm kind of torn between the tank mentality and I want to see competitive football on the field because I don't believe in this team right now with how they're structured. I think Jameis Winston will give them a little bit of a spark of energy, but they got a tough slate on their schedule. They're going to lose a lot of games, even if they play somewhat competitive football, I think, just because of how their injury issues are playing out right now, how their form has been. Um, Even if they try to put a decently competitive squad together for the rest of the year, what do they get? 5 wins, 6 wins, and just push themselves later back in the draft? Is it worth it? I don't know. I honestly think this may end up being a 3-win season, and it might not be the worst thing in the world when it comes to getting draft capital. It's just going to be a waste of a season, sadly, but it might be what this team actually needs.
We shall see. As I always say, the only thing I will say about that is looking at this year's draft class of quarterbacks, man, the Browns are always a year off. It never fails. It never fails. Were they 2 years off with Burrow though? They were 2 years from Joe Burrow, correct? When we took Baker Mayfield, didn't Burrow come out 2 years later, or was it the very next year?
Mm, trying to think. I mean, I think that was the national championship of 2019, so that would have been played in 2020, correct? For Burrow?
Yeah, 2 years later. So they drafted Baker in 18.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm trying to
but
piece it together. It all starts blending together after you pass
they're
a little bit of time, but
they're just
um
always slightly off, and that's the thing. Not no knock on Cam Ward. I love my guy Drew Aller, obviously, but I guess that's a pipe dream. Whatever. I still believe he is one hell of a talent. He's just in James Franklin's offense. He's not going to put up 4 or 5 touchdowns a game. It's just not going to happen. But I mean, there's gonna be some talent, and I look forward to your videos. I just it's like, man, if they could have came out this year with Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams, I really like Drake May. Um, he hasn't been torching it in New England, but he hasn't been that bad either. So Browns luck, I guess.
we'll see. I mean, this is a really good class of quarterbacks. I like Quinn Ewers. I
I
mean,
don't.
I think Ewers is a good quarterback. Um, I like Cam Ward. I think Cam Ward's very good. I think the thing with Drew Aller that's so interesting, and you have all the people who are like locals never work. You haven't seen a local like Drew Aller
Yeah.
who's that big, right?
Hmm.
Um, I mean, the thing is, he's got such a strong arm, and he's such a big kid, but he's the type of guy who you need just his personality and how he is. He's definitely somebody to smooth over the type of situation we have seen for the Browns here with Watson and just the chaos that's kind of gone on with it. So the interesting thing is going to be a matter of if he decides to come out this year or wait, because you talked about he's such a loyal person, such a loyal kid that it wouldn't be shocking to see him stay at Penn State another year, even if
Not at all.
it's not necessarily the best thing for him. Um, but I could see him coming out this year. I could see him waiting. If he waits, that could be really good for the Browns potentially. Um, but if he comes out this year with how good some of those other quarterbacks are, he may make it to the second round potentially. I mean, he's very talented. He's got all the size and stuff, but because of not putting up some of those major stats, like some of the other quarterbacks, because of James Franklin's system, um, I
You can
really
still.
think he could maybe slip to the second. And if you can get a good player or two in the first round and then get him in the second round, that's maybe a way to really form a good roster. So, going to be fun once we get closer to the draft. It's still a little early to talk about what could happen with that, but um, there's a lot of names that are going to be up there in the air. But I don't think the Browns have to be sold on 100% getting a quarterback in the top five pick. There's nothing wrong with trading down and picking up some draft capital that they haven't had.
No, I would just tell fans go back and watch the Kenny Pickett draft and Dom Cleary. His reaction, still one of my all-time favorites. I said Dahmer was just here. And yeah, that would literally probably be Cole and I, or I know myself for sure, if
Yeah,
the Browns somehow on night two, round two, fall into that draft pick.
yeah.
Oh, watch out! Like, I will literally get up and shout. So, yep, yeah. And again, October 24th, as I'm looking at the calendar here, and we're talking draft. My goodness, tells you what kind of start to the season the Browns have had. Again, I know we got to move on. We're short on time, but last year's season was so much fun. It was so much fun
It
not having to worry
was.
about this.
Yeah,
Golly.
it was. Well, we'll talk about a team who's not having the most fun because we're going to talk about our upset picks. I'm going to get to mine here in a second. I want to see what you have to say. But Vince, your upset pick, who do you have pulling one off against the favorite?
Well, I you kind of cut out there, my man. So I didn't hear. Did you make your pick yet?
No, I have not made my upset
Okay,
pick.
I've made three. So I have Washington over Chicago in a game that originally I didn't think was going to give us any of excitement. and now it should be really, really good and fun to watch. I have Tampa Bay over Atlanta, despite Godwin and Evans both being hurt. Tampa Bay playing without their receivers. However, Atlanta really laid an egg last week. They killed me because I picked them over Seattle and they lost. Gonna go with Tampa Bay. We'll see how that pans out. Tampa Bay a home underdog. You almost never see that, so I went ahead and grabbed them. And then Philadelphia, I have over Cincinnati because I just don't think Cincinnati is a very good football game this year. So to recap it, Philadelphia, Tampa Bay, Washington.
I'm with you on the Eagles. I'm with you on the Commanders. I did take the Falcons over the Buccaneers. I think Baker's going to have a tough time without his two top wide receivers. But the team I wanted to talk about who's really struggling this year, been a rough year for them after having some good years in recent times. I got the Arizona Cardinals taking down the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins are
Oh,
going to
there it is.
suffer another loss. That team is falling apart, and Mike McDaniels, his squad, I mean, they're done this year. They're out of it. They've got really no chance getting back into this. Everything went downhill pretty quickly after Tua was injured, and suffering another concussion. So the Arizona Cardinals, they're going to win this game 21-17. That is my official upset pick.
Yeah, buddy. That was the last one I had to decide. We talked about it briefly yesterday. I am just sick to my stomach over that game. I took Miami, I did, but it's just like, man, like I hope Tua was gonna play. It was confirmed that he was gonna play. How much we don't know. What kind of plays they're gonna call for him, we don't know. I'm just hoping at least for 1 week it gives that team kind of the uplift that they need. But just crazy enough because that was the one game I was so split on. I had to laugh too because Tampa Bay Atlanta, you bit me last time. Thursday night football, phenomenal game. Went to overtime, Atlanta won it. So if you get me twice in the same season on the same game, that's something else. But there you go, folks. That's at least two right there. You know that we have different. Again, Miami, Arizona, and the Tampa Bay Atlanta. Because as you said, we both have um, Philadelphia over Cincy and Washington over Chicago. Very excited for that game, which again I didn't think I would be.
I gotta say before we wrap this up, the Dolphins, you made me laugh when you said, we'll see what kind of plays they call for Tua. I mean, the poor guy can't catch a break. He's got these head injuries. I'd feel so bad for him if they go like quarterback draw right, right away, or a flea flicker and the
QB
pressure's in
die.
his face. Like the poor guy cannot catch a break. I mean, he's had some major head injuries, and the sad thing is it's really altered his career because he's an accurate quarterback. He's not the most mobile guy. He doesn't have the biggest arm, but he is an accurate quarterback. And with the speedy receivers of Hill and Waddle, I mean, it's been successful for them. They can't win when it gets to cold weather games, but I mean, they're very successful when they're playing in warm temperatures, and they just can't quite get over that hump. And I don't think they're ever going to. And the sad part is Tua keeps coming back, but um, yeah, he's had a rough go of it. So hopefully he gets good protection. Hopefully he can get back into a rhythm as he gets back on the field and doesn't take any hard shots early, because I'm definitely concerned about his future.
So you're not thinking of third and 10 QB draw?
Oh yeah, no. I mean,
Like we've seen high school all the time, but yeah, definitely not here.
1st and 10, push, see how far they
Yeah.
can they can get. Yeah, no, I as long as Tua's not needing to go head first in anything, fingers crossed for the Miami Dolphins. So
I, I
Vince,
will say this. I have to bring it up real quick. If you guys like background football or backyard football, you could almost watch any high school football game. You really could. Like it to me, high school football, because you bring it up about the play calling, is
yeah,
the last level of football where it really truly comes down to, hey, give it to the best kid on our team and let them run with it, or whatever you're gonna do. Like have our fastest kid just run streaks all game long, because
yeah,
other teams will adjust and things will, at college there'll be adjustments, and pros it doesn't matter how fast you are, someone's always going to be faster. But I'm telling you, high school is that league, where I saw it last week in the game our guys broadcasted, where it was 3rd and 52, and they ran a quarterback draw with Keller Moulton. I'm not joking. 3rd and 52 after sacks and penalties, and the coach came on the field, all kinds of craziness. The kid picked up 48 yards on a quarterback draw. Just Darian Jackson, who's usually kind of quiet, had the line of the week when he says, "Well, they didn't have a play in their playbook for 3 and 52, but they had one for 3 and 48." So high school football, you just gotta love it. And speaking of which, big one this weekend. I want to shout out our guys. It is a Silver Ale rivalry. For people who know Keon Sports, know how important that one personally is to me. A lot of family friends on both sides of that rivalry.
Mhm.
Definitely what got us our kickstart, what inspired a book. Also, the first game I ever called, first football game I ever called. So, a lot of excitement there. And good luck to our crew. As always, hard to believe it's week 10.
Yeah, week 10 already. Going to be a big one. Again, giving a shout out to the crew for the Silver Rail rivalry between Avon and Avon Lake. Vince, where are you going to be this week?
First time ever. I will be in Independence. So the Trojans will, the Trojans too. Well, the doggone it the heck. Trinity will be traveling to Independence to take on the Blue Devils. I'm excited. I had a goal for this season, and people who follow me might have picked up on it, but half of my goal was to cover repeats, cover games in stadiums I've covered before, which included Avon Lake at Berea Mid Park, Rhodes at Westlake, Ridgeville at North Olmsted. There are certain matchups that I've covered a
Mhm.
ridiculous amount of times in a set stadium. My other goal for this year was to cover teams um, by hook or crook that I had never covered before, and I was able to pull that off when St. Ed's played Cincinnati Elder.
Mhm.
Um, Last week, I called a game with NDCL and Padua. I had covered Padua before, but my first time seeing NDCL, and this week, my first time ever covering either one of these schools, Trinity or Independence. And I got to laugh too because going back in my history of life, I got to start broadcasting
Soccer.
for the soccer team. You know where I was going with this one, the
Yep.
AFC Cleveland Royals that played their games there in Independence. It's
Mhm.
also across the Liberty Playground, which for you people out there with little kids, take them to Liberty Playground in Independence. That's 2 years in a row ranked by Maggie and Madeline as the number one playground in Northeast Ohio. So that should be a good time.
Well, week 10, final week of the scoreboard on keonsports.com. Make sure you check that out. By the way, keonsports.com, if you want to see all of the picks that we made for this week, no bye weeks for anybody. So this is a full 16 game slate. So make sure you check that out on the website. And of course, as always on Friday night, make sure you pay attention to the scoreboard. For myself, Cole McDaniel, Vince McKee, that does it for week 8. We'll be back with you for week 9.